Blockchain offers a variety of big advantages, but it's not always obvious for people to know them. At the moment we have a kind of situation where everyone just knows they need blockchain, but only half of the people know why they actually can use it or why it can be of benefit. Just to make it clear, I mean, the blockchain is a data storage in chronologically ordered blocks. Where it's important to say that those blocks cannot be altered or manipulated, and the changes of the state is happening by a cryptographically authentication. What that brings, or how can I say, simply put, blockchain has a great benefit of blockchain is to create trust in an environment where no one needs to trust any other one. And this is very spectacular because you have a lot of situations where no company can trust a competing company, but they have a consensus on the blockchain ledger where everyone trust on the system without having any central entity that regulates that or controls that. Mostly in most markets you just have central authorities or central entities where everyone needs to trust them and they are building the trust. But in blockchain this is not needed anymore. And this is a big thing. This is a big thing in various markets. Finance markets, for example, also in healthcare or other markets, just on a kind of meta level in between companies. So I'm telling this specifically because you hear also sometimes smaller companies that want to migrate to the blockchain, where sometimes certainly there is some application, but mostly the big applications for blockchain is on a higher level. So it's in between companies. It's not for one company migrating to the blockchain. It's mostly of big benefit on where, for example, a whole market is finding a public ledger to use. The banks, for example, using their own blockchain, or the healthcare system eventually, or any kind of the notaries use a public ledger together. In these situations, there is a big difference between private and public blockchains, and you see here, I think that table summarizes the most important points. What I specifically want to say here is that the more private a blockchain gets, the more it's getting similar to a database. If you have two entities or one entity having a blockchain, then the use case gets more and more questionable, because the really strength of the blockchains are unfolding if you have a larger group or a larger set of entities. And this is, I'm saying this because a lot of great benefits that you have with blockchain come really to highlight on the public blockchain side. And I don't want to say private blockchains are not of that great use, not at all. Private blockchains have great functionalities, but certainly if you make it too private, then some of the big benefits are just disappearing. I'm talking about benefits like having a decentralized system, where you don't have you don't need trusted entities. So that's, for example, the more public it is, I mean, the more decentralized it can get. Other things, for example, where there's a difference is the incentive for maintaining it. For the public blockchains, you have the economic reward of the miners, for example, or stakers, or depends on the consensus mechanism. And you have on the private side, you have the reputation. Where is it stored is also a big thing. When you look at vulnerability or things, you're way better having a decentralized distribution than central servers. So it really depends on the use case, which blockchain is of better use. just to look at also on the other side, for example, if you have a market of only a few entities where they can generally trust each other to a certain degree, it's probably preferable to have a private blockchain because they don't benefit so much of making it public, because they can just have better control when it's private. And yeah, this is, for example, the banks are thinking about having their own private chain, or maybe using Ethereum or one of the current public blockchains. And this is the kind of dialogue that is currently happening there. What is the best? For example, IBM is mainly looking into providing private blockchain solutions for entities. Yeah, I think that's the major difference. When you are looking, for example, now, I think very good example of public blockchains are the cryptocurrencies. This is really a very remarkable phenomenon and a very exciting market, what is happening there. And you can see on this diagram that the ecosystem really works very well with these three entities. You have the users and the merchants that vitalize the network. They use the exchange and the payment providers that bond the network, and you have the miners that secure the network. And all is interacting with each other, and it's a really, yeah, I mean, you can see it. There's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there at the moment, and there's some really interesting dynamics emerging, and very interesting markets happening. Here's just a summary of the most important features of cryptocurrencies. I think most of you are familiar probably with cryptocurrencies. I don't need to explain the basics, but yeah, here is the biggest highlights of cryptocurrencies. I mean, in shortly put, I think you can phrase it like that. With cryptocurrencies, you can send money from anywhere in the world to anywhere else in the world without any boundaries, completely free, within light speed. You can send money. This is a big thing. This is an application that a lot of the cryptocurrencies offer, and that is happening because it is based on public blockchain. So there is no central authority. There is no. It's completely decentralized, and yeah, there is no regulator or anyone that can block transactions, or there are no boundaries. It's a global scale. There is no country borders or anything like that. And just to give one example of, I mean, Bitcoin and one use case. At the moment, if you try to send money from here to a farmer in Africa, you will probably relatively quickly realize that there are some difficulties. And until the money is there, it takes a long time, if it will happen at all. And it also will cost quite a lot, because there are a lot of intermediary banks or intermediaries in general that take a cut. So cryptocurrencies makes it indeed possible to send money from here within light speed to a farmer in Africa, and having no costs in between and no boundaries. Yeah, coming back to the public blockchains, where really there's the big innovation happening, the decentralization and all the great benefits blockchain offers. We have the two giants at the moment, and most of you are probably very familiar with them. We have Bitcoin on the one hand, of course, the oldest blockchain with which all started. If Satoshi Nakamoto wouldn't have invented Bitcoin, we wouldn't all sit here and talk about blockchain or Bitcoin, of course. And we have Ethereum, which offers a variety of great benefits in a different way than Bitcoin. And I have to say, I mean, I think some of you might have, how can I say, were involved maybe in the scaling debate of Bitcoin. There was this kind of debate how to scale the network. The blocks went more and more full, which is an ongoing debate. But I have to say, looking at the moment at the solutions that are provided to this and how Bitcoin can grow, we have on-chain scaling like SegWit or Schnorr signatures. We have second-level layer scaling like the Lightning or Thunder network, and we have sidechains, rootstock, smart contracts. There is really a lot of innovation going on in Bitcoin, and this is really great to see. So I'm very optimistic about Bitcoin, probably as optimistic as rarely before. And with Ethereum, you have some other great benefits. You have the smart contracts, which make it possible for a lot of developers to directly code apps based on the Ethereum blockchain, which is really great. This is something that you don't have so easily with Bitcoin. For example, I was in Shanghai on the DEF CON recently, and there were more than 700 developers, very passionate, came from all over the world, flew to Shanghai, and wanted to bring up their ideas and wanted to start coding applications based on the blockchain. And this is very simple. Made with Ethereum, with the smart contracts. So, for example, the smart contracts just provide these kind of ease for a developer to code whatever they want in their smart contract and not having to influence the Ethereum chain directly. And this is really, really cool. That can drive the innovation a lot. In Bitcoin, it's a bit more difficult. Changes in the Bitcoin blockchain are very sometimes very difficult, of course, and you see already on the scaling debate that it takes quite a while. This has, of course, some disadvantages in that regard, but it also has some advantages because every step is well thought, and there's just, I mean, Bitcoin is the biggest and most secure chain at the moment, so there's a lot of stake involved. It's more than $11 billion market capacity right now, so people need to be very aware of what changes are made to the Bitcoin blockchain. But the difference is that Bitcoin doesn't offer this kind of container for developers to develop their own apps as easy as in the smart contracts for Ethereum at the moment, for example. What both chains have in common, and that's why that's how I can how we come to mining, is they both rely on a trustful consensus system. And for both currencies, cryptocurrencies, this consensus system is the proof of work. And proof of work, I mean, how can I say? This is something, I mean, somewhere has this trust in the system has to come from. And if you don't have a central entity who establishes this trust, where everyone needs to trust in, how can I say? You need this consensus system for that, and this is established by the miners in the proof of work consensus system for Ethereum and Bitcoin So in that regard, the miners are validating the transactions for both blockchains, and are of course essential in that way, and are also securing the network. That's another very important point to understand. Because for consensus systems in general, if you have more than 50%, you are determining the consensus. So if you are more than half of the entities, you can do whatever you want with the chain. You can attack the chain. You can destroy it. So that this is not happening on those chains, it's important that there is a lot of hash power and a lot of mining capacity already in the chain, so that a new entity cannot easily get more than 50% and hijack the chain. So they're securing in that regard. The miners are essential for securing the blockchains, are essential for validating the transactions. So really, this is a very critical point. So Yeah, public blockchains need a consensus system. The best consensus system we have at the moment is the proof of work, and proof of work is the miners calculating their hash functions and validating the transactions and thereby securing the blockchain. I think if you understand that, this is a very critical point to understand in what way mining and blockchain has to interact or has to do with each other. When we're talking about mining, there has a lot of things have happened in this space. When we look at, for example, Bitcoin, in the first days of Bitcoin, Satoshi mined with his own laptop, mined all the coins that were generated because he was the only miner. This is really incredible. So he mined more than 1 million Bitcoin with his laptop, with his first computers. And of course, as the market grew, there were more incentive for technical oriented people to optimize the mining and get a larger market share. And therefore mine Bitcoins or Ether or other cryptocurrencies. So we had the first stage was the CPU, the second stage was the GPUs. People started using their graphic cards, which were more powerful than the CPUs, but needed a little bit more optimization. Then the first kind of real techies got involved and developed the first FPGA modules, which are stronger than the GPUs, and then which we are now obviously in Bitcoin, the ASIC machines, the ASIC miners came, where you really have you have a chip in silicon, which is doing nothing else than running those optimized hash functions that you need for mining. So those chips are very stupid in a way because they only, for example, in Bitcoin, they only can run these double SHA hash functions and do the mining. But they are very powerful in doing this specific operation. And of course, the ASIC, you have certain nanometer sizes, and of course, the technology is arising and going forward more and more. The newest ASICs at the moment are at 16 nanometer, 16, 14 nanometer, which is very remarkable. And I think Intel is now going to 10 nanometer in their next chips. So this is a very exciting field. And this was now the example for Bitcoin. Ethereum, for Ethereum, there is no ASICs at the moment, and that is also because Ethereum is at some point switching over to a proof-of-stake consensus system. I don't want to go too much into the details here, but for Ethereum, we are still at the GPU level. Some rumors are going that there are some FPGA modules, but the most hashing power in Ethereum certainly is the GPUs. So now about the structure of the mining world. I think we can categorize that into two main categories. And that is the home miners, which, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other cryptocurrencies are decentralized, and that's really the sense of it. So you can plug your own machine, you can plug your own computer in and start mining, or you can just purchase a machine and plug it in your home. And then you are basically a home miner. So this is the one category of miners. Those are the home miners ordering machines and plugging them into their plugs at home. And you're using the home miners are mostly installing their hardware using standard PC accessories. And installation of software using mostly community-driven open source programs. That is the one category, and this is the other one, which has emerged over the time and of course have grown more and more. By now it's really a massive industry, and I can say, in Bitcoin, also in Ethereum, there is only a few very large, massive mining facilities around the world, saturated and points where there is the lowest electricity and most beneficial infrastructure, and being at those places and growing further and further. And this is the large-scale mining. And for large-scale mining, the miners are using their own proprietary optimized software. They are using the economy of scale in order to get, of course, economic advantages. And they have really they're aiming that there's literally a kind of war between the big mining organizations to find the lowest electricity rates on the planet. And that's very interesting as well. Where really is the lowest electricity? Sometimes there are some areas arising that you would have never thought that there is so cheap electricity. Sometimes there are some other government subsidies or other interesting phenomenon happening that really make some spots interesting, which you probably never have thought about. What you see here in the picture is that the first is the Enigma farm. The Enigma farm is our largest, or it is the largest Ethereum mining facility on the world. If you look, for example, in processing units, you're talking in flops. Maybe you have known that. I mean, in the mining world, you're talking about hashes per second. But if you want to make it general, if you compare, for example, supercomputers on the world, you're mostly talking about flops. And the Enigma farm has 34.8, I think, comparable petaflops, which is higher than the. Just on a side note, it's more than the world's #1 supercomputer, Tianhe 2, in China. Of course, I mean, this differentiation is a bit vague in some points because we are not aiming for flops, we're aiming for hashes. The supercomputer are doing other kinds of processing. But it's still, I think, a remarkable fact. There's multiple megawatts involved, and those farms are just, very large and have some really big sizes. On the picture below, you're seeing an ASIC facility. That's Bitcoin ASIC miners, and that should just give an impression of how big these facilities are by now. Now I think it's time to really just. I don't want to make it too detailed, but I want to tell you briefly about why mining or investing in the mining economy is an interesting opportunity. And I think this little graph here shows actually the main argument, or explains it very well. If you're looking here on the graph directly, you have three kinds of simplified miners. We're assuming now a scenario of having three different miners, three different efficiency classes of miners in the market, and the blue line is the highest efficient miner, the orange line is the medium, and the green line is the lowest efficient miner. And now we are assuming each miner has the same capacity, but of course the less efficient miner has a higher cost, a higher ongoing cost of maintaining the operation. And now we're going to the right, you see the time. We're assuming now that the profitability is dropping over time for the whole market. And then we're looking at the income of each miner over the time. And what you're seeing here is that as time goes by and profitability decreases, you see, for example, that the green miner, the lowest efficient miner, at one point is just standing still, and there's no more return coming because they have to drop out. They have to shut down their operation because at one point when the profitability decreases and they have the highest ongoing costs, their costs are higher than what they earn, and they consequently have to drop out. So they turn down their farm, and consequently for the medium and the highest efficient miner, for the orange and the blue line, they get a boost in revenue because of course the pie stays the same, but the green one steps out, so the others have a boost in profit and revenue. So as time goes by then, the orange and blue one earn a decent amount, get a good profit, but then at some point as the profitability decreases further, the orange one has to drop out. Because it's just not profitable anymore, so that means the orange one stays still and the blue one gets another boost. So the blue one, the core message out of this is, if you are the most efficient miner, mining can be a very interesting and very profitable investment. But you need to know how to do it right. And this is sometimes very challenging and not always clear, because you never know what your competitors are up to and how strong and efficient your competitors are. When it comes to efficiency, simply put, there is three kinds of efficiencies or three kinds of things that you need to be aware of. You have the hardware efficiency, of course, the chips. You need to the chips at some point, they need to be the strongest, of course. We have the infrastructure efficiency, which is the cooling and economy of scale, and we have the electricity rates, which determine also the costs. So they have to be minimum as well. Here is another thing. I don't want to go into too much of the details, but if you're looking, the cryptocurrency space is very big, and there's a lot of cryptocurrencies. You can think now one step further and think, oh, well, for example, the GPUs, they are very dynamic in the algorithm. So they can, if one coin, for example, is too difficult to mine, they can just go on another coin, mine that. If it's easier and the return is higher, they can just switch over and mine the other coin. So if you go one step further, you can think of, oh, wow, actually I could look at the whole cryptocurrency market, look at what coins to mine, and then determine a portfolio and do portfolio optimization of coins to mine, and spread the hash rate amongst a certain set of coins, and then mine those coins and then auto-convert it, for example, to the gold currency, to Bitcoin. And this can, of course, be more efficient and more profitable than only mining Bitcoin or only mining a certain currency and having to deal with the difficulty, the rising difficulty. One thing as a closing remark, I want to mention that Genesis Mining has, we have created the first regulated Bitcoin mining fund a few months ago, and it's the Logos Fund. It's BaFin approved, which is the German authority, financial authority, and it's also, we also have an American entity which is SEC approved. This is the only way at the moment for people investing in mining on a securities level, and we have done that because there's just a lot of interest for institutional investors and funds and various kinds of investment entities, and they would prefer to have a regulated structure in order to invest in mining. So if you're interested in investing in mining in a securities on a security level, Logos Fund is the way to go. You can find more information on logos-fund.com, and it offers a variety of advantages compared to investing in mining directly. One is, for example, that you can liquidate your shares at a later stage, which is sometimes not always given if you're investing in a farm directly. The last word now, if you want to go into mining, I think right now is the best time. Why? Because there's only 25% of all Bitcoins left to be mined, and there's only 15% of all the Ether around left to be mined. I think it's even way less, probably around 10%, which is very remarkable. And I can tell you right now, I mean, a lot of big institutions and companies are looking, or venture capitalists, various kinds of investment entities are looking into how do they get the most amount of Bitcoin, the most amount of Ethereum, or how do they best leverage in the market. And it's not always as trivial as just going on the exchange and buying them, especially if it's about a lot of money, because the market is not arbitrarily liquid, and there are often better ways. And one way is, for example, to really start large-scale mining operations and mine the coins. And this is a very interesting opportunity, and if you want to do that right now, this is the best time. And one thing I think I don't need to say to clear, probably all of you know who are familiar with economics, there is an increasing demand by the growing adoption of cryptocurrencies. I mean, Bitcoin is getting more and more popular, Ethereum is getting more and more popular, but simultaneously the increasing scarcity is happening. For example, Bitcoin block halving. At the moment, there's only 1,800 Bitcoins every day that are mined. And in 4 years, there's only 900 Bitcoins per day that are mined. And in another 4 years or another period to the next halving, there's only 450 Bitcoins that are mined every day. So there's the halving period. That makes Bitcoin more and more scarce. That means growing scarcity, but also growing demand. And some might come to the conclusion then that this might probably result in an increasing price of the underlying. I thank you all for the attention, and I hope I could clarify some of your understanding in mining and the opportunities.